Wisconsin is a land of rolling hills, dense forests, and misty rivers. But hidden among its landscapes are silent villages, abandoned by the living, yet never truly empty. These villages are frozen in time. Empty homes, shuttered shops, and forgotten streets hold whispers of lives once lived, and secrets that refuse to die. Visitors report shadowy figures pacing deserted streets, doors creaking in the windless night, and voices echoing through empty homes. Some say the villages are cursed. Others claim the spirits of past residents wander, retracing their daily routines, or warning visitors to leave before darkness falls. Tonight, we will journey through 25 of Wisconsin's most haunted silent villages, where the air is thick with mystery. Shadows glide between the buildings, and the past lingers like fog over empty streets. Walk carefully. These villages are not simply abandoned. They are watched, remembered, and never truly empty. Locals speak of Frost Hollow in hushed tones, warning travelers and curiosity seekers that the town is not as empty as it appears. One particularly vivid account comes from a young woman named Lily, who visited Frost Hollow on a moonless night. As she walked down the main street, she noticed a shadowy figure gliding past the window of an abandoned home. She froze, listening as soft footsteps echoed behind her. A sudden, icy breeze swept across her neck, and she felt the sensation of a presence brushing past her. When she turned toward the figure in the window, it had vanished, leaving only the faint silhouette of a room frozen in disarray. Every step she took seemed to draw her deeper into the town's spectral history, the combination of sound, sight, and sensation leaving her disoriented and frightened. She hurried out of the alleys, haunted by the feeling that the town itself had been watching her every move. The history of Frost Hollow is inseparable from its haunting. Once a thriving logging and farming community, the town declined over decades as industries moved away and younger generations left in search of opportunity. Homes were abandoned, businesses shuttered, and streets fell into disrepair. The rapid abandonment and the abrupt departures of its residents have led many to believe that the energy of those who once lived there remains embedded in the town. Paranormal researchers suggest that the shadowy figures, footsteps, and strange sounds are residual manifestations of the town's past, echoes of lives frozen in time, replaying for anyone who ventures into Frost Hollow after dark. Visitors often report experiencing multiple phenomena simultaneously. A single night might include seeing a shadowy figure in a window, hearing footsteps behind them, feeling a sudden cold draft, and hearing whispers drifting from abandoned homes, all occurring within moments. This layering of sensory experiences creates an immersive haunting, making Frost Hollow feel like a space outside of time, where the present intersects with the echoes of the past. Even during daylight, the town retains an unsettling aura. While the streets may appear quiet and empty, locals caution that its true nature is revealed only after dark. Occasional glimpses of shadows, the faint sound of footsteps, or whispers from broken houses serve as reminders that Frost Hollow is never truly abandoned. It is a liminal place, a threshold between life and memory, where the past continues to interact with the living. Frost Hollow is more than cracked streets and abandoned homes. Shadowy figures glide past windows, phantom footsteps echo through alleys, and whispers drift from broken interiors. Cold drafts sweep over visitors, and the feeling of unseen eyes watching lingers in every corner. Anyone daring to explore the town after dark confronts a haunting that blends history, tragedy, and the unexplained into a fully immersive experience. Misty Pines, nestled in the remote stretches of Ashland County, is a town frozen in time, where abandoned homes and overgrown yards tell the story of lives long gone. The streets are quiet, cracked, and lined with skeletal trees, their branches stretching toward the sky like twisted fingers. Visitors frequently report strange and unsettling phenomena, the most common of which are ghostly children seen playing in empty yards. Their laughter, faint and fleeting, carries on the wind, sometimes startling those who wander the quiet streets after dark. The children are rarely seen for long. They appear at the edges of overgrown lawns, running between broken fences, or skipping around dilapidated playgrounds. Their forms are vague, often described as shadowy silhouettes, yet their movements are unmistakably human. Observers say that the children play as if caught in an endless moment, reenacting games and routines that belonged to a time before the town was abandoned. Sometimes, a visitor will catch a fleeting glimpse of a child spinning in circles, a pair of hands clapping, or a figure crouching to pick up an invisible object. Visitors often find themselves calling out, half expecting an answer, only for the laughter to vanish when they draw near. The town was once a thriving community, its residents drawn by logging, farming, and small local industries. Families raised children who played freely in yards and fields, attended local schools, and lived lives intimately connected to the natural landscape. Over time, economic hardship, harsh winters, and illness led to the gradual abandonment of the town. Visitors to Misty Pines often experience multiple phenomena simultaneously. One evening, a woman walking through the main street reported hearing faint giggles coming from a yard to her left. She glanced over and saw two shadowy figures chasing each other around an old swing set, their forms blurred in the moonlight. Experiences like these are reported frequently, reinforcing the idea that Misty Pines is haunted not just by memory, but by the lingering presence of those who once lived and played there. The town itself amplifies the haunting atmosphere. Narrow streets wind between abandoned homes, many with broken windows and collapsing porches. Tall grasses and undergrowth creep along fences and sidewalks, creating an environment where shadows and movement can deceive the eye. Even in daylight, visitors report a feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes follow them through the town. At night, when the darkness swells and the wind stirs, the ghostly children and their laughter emerge, turning empty yards and abandoned playgrounds into a stage for spectral reenactments of long-past days. The sensations experienced in Misty Pines are not limited to sight and sound. Some visitors report feeling sudden chills, cold gusts of air that move along with the laughter, or a brushing sensation on their skin, as if an unseen hand has passed nearby. These tactile experiences reinforce the sense that the town is alive with echoes, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is porous, and where the past persists in layers of sound, movement, and feeling. Misty Pines is a town where childhood echoes never fade. Ghostly children appear playing in empty yards, their laughter drifting on the wind and vanishing when approached. Abandoned homes, overgrown streets, and rustling leaves create an atmosphere steeped in memory, where the joy, innocence, and sadness of past lives linger. Anyone walking through Misty Pines after dark steps into a space where time has stalled, and where the playful spirits of children, long gone, continue to move, call, and laugh, leaving visitors with a haunting experience they cannot easily forget. Raven Creek, nestled deep within the forests of Sawyer County, is a place where the ordinary world seems to dissolve into the eerie and inexplicable. By day, the winding roads and dense trees suggest a quiet, unremarkable stretch of countryside, the kind of place hikers and travelers might pass without a second thought. But as dusk falls, the landscape transforms. Fog gathers in low-lying areas, obscuring the edges of the forest and the curves of the road, and a strange stillness settles over the creek and the intersections that branch from it. Locals speak of figures standing motionless at these intersections, shadowy shapes that vanish the moment they are looked at directly, and of the wind carrying whispers of names, long forgotten, the voices of those who once walked the land and never truly left. Travelers describe a consistent pattern of apparitions at certain intersections, usually near old, abandoned houses or where the forest encroaches closely on the road. Figures appear suddenly and without warning. They are humanoid, though often vague and undefined, their forms blending with the shadows. Some appear to be adults, others children, and all stand still, as though frozen in time. watching the approach of anyone daring enough to drive or walk along the empty roads. Yet when approached or directly observed, the figures vanish instantly, leaving the intersection empty and silent, as if the encounter had only existed at the edge of perception. This disappearing act, repeated countless times, has given Raven Creek its reputation as a crossroads between the living and the dead. These sounds, combined with the sudden appearance and disappearance of shadowy figures, create an atmosphere of profound unease that makes the simplest walk or drive through Raven Creek an experience fraught with tension. The history of Raven Creek contributes to the feeling of lingering spirits. The area was once home to small, isolated communities, farmers, and lumber workers who lived close to the dense forests. Tragedies were common. Accidents with equipment, illness, and occasional disappearances left their mark on the landscape. Over time, many of the houses were abandoned as families moved to more prosperous towns or succumbed to the harshness of life in the woods. Residents who remained often spoke of strange occurrences, the feeling of being watched, unexplained sounds at night, and fleeting glimpses of figures in the trees. Shadowy figures are most frequently observed at these crossroads, never in the middle of open stretches of road. The way these figures vanish, when looked at directly, adds a psychological element to the hauntings, making it impossible to fully grasp their form or intent, and leaving observers with the persistent sensation of being observed by something that cannot be confronted. Visitors report that phenomena often overlap. A single drive through Raven Creek may include seeing a figure vanish at an intersection, hearing a name whispered in the wind, and feeling sudden cold drafts brushing through the car or along the roadside. This layering of experiences makes the haunting immersive, a sensory environment that engages sight, sound, and feeling simultaneously. Some have described feeling a hand on their shoulder or a presence beside them while walking, only to turn and find the road empty, the trees still, and the fog curling silently through the underbrush. And abandoned houses, broken fences, and old signage give the impression that the past is never far away. and the figures appear along intersections, waiting silently for anyone who dares to pass. Raven Creek is more than a stretch of road through the woods. Shadowy figures stand at intersections, frozen in time, only to vanish when approached. The wind carries whispers of names long dead, sometimes warnings, sometimes calls, sometimes fragments of conversations lost to history. The air is filled with sudden chills, footsteps that cannot be traced, and an ever-present feeling of being watched. Anyone venturing through the creek after dark experiences a place where the past refuses to remain buried, a liminal space where the living brush against echoes of the long departed, and where the unseen observers of the forest keep silent watch, ready to make their presence known. Hollowbrook, a small town in Burnett County, is a place where the line between the living and the dead feels impossibly thin. Once a bustling settlement of loggers, farmers, and families seeking solitude, it now stands mostly abandoned, its streets cracked and overgrown, and its homes left to decay under the relentless passage of time. What remains, however, is far from lifeless. Visitors to Hollowbrook frequently report strange, unexplained, phenomenal lantern-like lights flickering inside empty homes, doors slamming shut without cause, and floors creaking as though invisible footsteps cross the rooms. The town's reputation for haunting has grown over the years, drawing curious travelers. The most common reports involve flickering lights seen through the windows of vacant homes, often described as small, warm glows reminiscent of lanterns or candlelight. These lights appear at night, bobbing gently as if carried by unseen hands. Visitors driving past the abandoned streets have claimed to see the lights move from room to room, appearing in attics, living rooms, or behind broken curtains. When approached, the lights vanish, leaving only darkness behind. Some theorists suggest that these lights are the residual energy of the town's former residents, manifestations of nightly routines frozen in time. Accompanying the lights are unexplained sounds that unsettle even the most skeptical visitors. Doors slam on their own, often with enough force to startle anyone nearby. Floors creak under invisible weight, as if unseen residents are walking across the rooms. Some have reported hearing faint whispers, conversations too soft to make out, yet undeniably human. Hollowbrook's history seems intertwined with its hauntings. The town thrived during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, its economy built on logging and small-scale farming. Families lived in tight-knit communities, their lives punctuated by the work of the forest and the rhythms of the seasons. But tragedy and decline struck the town over the decades. He describes instances of doors opening and closing in abandoned homes, accompanied by the faint scent of smoke or wood polish, as if the houses themselves remembered their former inhabitants. In one particular home, he reported seeing the glow of a lantern on the second floor, moving slowly across the room. When he called out, the light disappeared instantly, and the upstairs room remained completely empty. Such occurrences are repeated in multiple locations, suggesting that the hauntings are not confined to a single house or street. but are instead a pervasive feature of Hollowbrook itself. The town's architecture amplifies the haunting atmosphere. Narrow streets wind through clusters of abandoned homes, many with broken windows and collapsed porches. Visitors report that even minor sounds, like the crunch of leaves or the snap of a branch, are amplified in Hollowbrook, blending with the existing paranormal activity to create an overwhelming sense of presence. Visitors often report experiencing multiple phenomena at once. A single walk through Hollowbrook might include seeing a lantern-like glow flicker in a window, hearing the creak of floorboards under unseen weight, feeling a sudden cold draft, and hearing a door slam, all occurring within minutes. This layering of visual, auditory, and tactile experiences makes the haunting immersive, convincing many that the town itself is alive with memory and spectral presence. Even in daylight, Hollowbrook retains an aura of unease. Broken windows and decaying homes seem to watch visitors, while the quiet streets amplify every sound, making it easy to imagine footsteps where none exists. But the true intensity of the hauntings emerges at night, when lantern-like lights appear, floors creak under invisible weight, and doors slam without cause, revealing the town as a place where the past refuses to rest. A place where the spirits of the past continue to interact with the living, ensuring that Hollowbrook remains a town forever caught between life and the shadows. Blackwood, located in the heart of Florence County, is a town that time seems to have forgotten. Its streets, once alive with the bustle of townsfolk and the hum of daily life, now lie quiet and cracked, flanked by homes that sag with age and neglect. Yet, despite its abandonment, Blackwood is far from lifeless. Visitors frequently report strange and unsettling phenomena, shadowy figures pacing deserted streets, the faint aroma of old fires and cooking drifting from abandoned homes, and the persistent feeling that the town is observing anyone who wanders through it. These experiences have earned Blackwood a reputation as one of the eeriest towns in the region, a place where the remnants of its past seem unwilling to let go. The most commonly reported encounters involve the shadowy forms that appear along the streets. These figures are rarely stationary for long. They are seen pacing in front of houses, lingering in alleyways, or disappearing suddenly at the edge of the street. Witnesses often describe them as vaguely humanoid, their shapes blurred as if they are caught between the material world and some other, spectral plane. Some observers claim the figures move with deliberate purpose, retracing steps that once belonged to the living, as if endlessly reenacting routines from decades past. When approached, the shadows vanish, leaving only the silent streets and the echo of hurried footsteps that were never there. The consistency of these sightings suggests that Blackwood is more than merely abandoned. It is haunted by echoes of lifelong departed. Even more peculiar than the shadowy figures are the smells that permeate the town. Many visitors report catching faint aromas of cooking drifting from empty kitchens, or the smoky scent of long-extinguished fires wafting through the air. Some have smelled the unmistakable aroma of freshly baked bread or simmering stews, as if someone unseen is preparing a meal. These scents often appear randomly, sometimes accompanying the appearance of shadowy figures, and vanish as suddenly as they arrive. Paranormal researchers theorize that these olfactory phenomena are manifestations of the town's past, sensory imprints of the lives that once thrived here. They suggest that the smells are residual, tied to the routines and habits of former residents, replaying on a loop that is perceptible to the living. The town's history provides a chilling context for the hauntings. Blackwood grew during the late 1800s as a hub for logging and small-scale industry. Families established homes, shops, and communal spaces that shape the rhythm of life. Yet over time, economic decline and repeated misfortune fires, disease outbreaks, and unexplained disappearances drove most residents away. Many left abruptly, abandoning belongings and leaving homes partially furnished. Others never left at all, succumbing to accidents, illness, or unknown tragedies. Paranormal investigators believe that this sudden and often tragic exodus left a spiritual imprint, causing the town to echo with the sights, smells, and movements of its past inhabitants. Visitors often describe multiple phenomena occurring simultaneously. One evening, a couple driving through Blackwood reported seeing a shadowy figure pacing near an old general store, while the smell of wood smoke drifted from a nearby home. As they slowed to get a closer look, another shadow appeared at the end of the street, moving toward the first. The couple stepped out of the car, calling out, but both figures vanished instantly, leaving only the cold wind and a faint lingering scent of burning wood. Similar experiences have been reported by lone hikers and paranormal enthusiasts, reinforcing the impression that the town itself is alive with echoes of the past, replaying in ways that defy explanation. The auditory environment of Blackwood further heightens its eerie atmosphere. Many visitors report hearing the faint murmur of conversations, the distant clatter of dishes, or the soft creak of a rocking chair, as though invisible residents are moving through their former homes. These sounds often accompany the appearance of shadowy figures or the drifting sense of cooking, creating a multisensory haunting that envelops anyone walking the streets after dark. The combination of sight, smell, and sound fosters a profound sense of immersion, making Blackwood a place that seems to exist between the world of the living and the realm of the departed. One particularly compelling account comes from a local historian who explores Blackwood regularly. While wandering the main street after twilight, he saw a shadowy figure moving deliberately between two old houses. At the same moment, the smell of charred wood and stew filled the air. When he tried to approach, the figure dissolved into darkness, and the aromas vanished with it. The historian described a sensation of being watched, as though the town itself was aware of his presence. He returned to the same street on another evening, only to witness a different figure pacing near a corner store, accompanied by the faint, ghostly odor of bread baking. These repeated encounters suggest a consistency in the hauntings, a persistent replay of life in Blackwood long after the living have departed. The town's architecture contributes to its spectral atmosphere. Narrow streets wind unpredictably through clusters of abandoned homes, many with shattered windows and collapsing porches. Forests and overgrown yards encroach upon the streets, casting long shadows that move with the moonlight, even during the day. Visitors report a disquieting sensation, a subtle awareness of being observed, but at night, the hauntings fully reveal themselves. Lantern-like flickers of light, footsteps that echo without source, and the smells of past life combine to create an immersive experience that is both beautiful and terrifying. Blackwood is more than empty streets and crumbling homes. Shadowy forms pace along deserted avenues, vanishing when confronted. The sense of long-extinguished fires and forgotten meals drift through abandoned houses. Unexplained sounds echo from within, as if the town itself remembers its past. Anyone who wanders through Blackwood after dark encounters a place where the ordinary world feels suspended. Silent Meadow, tucked away in the remote stretches of Iron County, is a place where the quiet seems unnaturally deep, almost as if the world itself holds its breath. The town and its surrounding fields are largely abandoned, relics of a once thriving agricultural community. Old barns lean precariously under the weight of time, and schoolhouses stand with shattered windows and doors hanging on rusted hinges. Despite the outward stillness, the area is far from lifeless. Visitors frequently report ghostly silhouettes drifting through the empty structures, their forms fleeting yet unmistakably human. Soft whispers echo across the fields and inside the buildings, sometimes eerily repeating the visitor's own name, creating a sensation of being watched and addressed by unseen presences. The barns at Silent Meadow are often the first locations where ghostly activity is observed. Once centers of daily life, the barns are now abandoned shells filled with the scent of decayed hay and rotting wood. People walking past or through them have reported seeing dark shapes moving within, glimpsed through gaps in the boards or through broken windows. These silhouettes are usually humanoid in form, though often indistinct, appearing as shadows that stretch and flicker as if caught between the present and some other dimension. In some cases, visitors have described seeing figures carrying invisible tools, stacking unseen hay bales, or performing other daily chores long forgotten by the living. The sense is that the barns are still in use by those who no longer exist. When approached directly, the figures vanish instantly, leaving only the creaking of the old timber and the wind whispering through the empty stalls. The schoolhouses of Silent Meadow are equally haunting. Once filled with children's laughter and the chatter of lessons, they now stand silent, their blackboards dust-covered and desks overturned. Visitors report seeing small, ghostly silhouettes moving between the desks or at the end of hallways. Sometimes, a visitor will hear soft footsteps echoing across the wooden floors, though no living person is present. The whispers here are particularly unnerving, often repeating words or names, and occasionally uttering the visitor's own name in a tone so gentle and intimate that it sends shivers down the spine. Some believe these voices are echoes of children who once studied here, trapped in a residual loop of their daily lives. Others theorize that the whispers are more intentional, a haunting that seeks to interact with anyone who enters the schoolhouse after dark. Visitors often experience a combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena. One man recounted walking through the main barn on a foggy evening. He glimpsed a shadowy figure near the loft and heard the faint squeak of wood above him, as if someone were pacing the upper floor. Then, a soft whisper called his name, repeated 3 times in rapid succession. When he turned toward the sound, the figure had disappeared, leaving the barn empty and silent. Moments later, a cold draft swept through the structure, carrying with it the scent of old hay and charred wood, a sensory reminder of life long past. Similar experiences have been reported by multiple visitors, indicating that the haunting is not a product of imagination alone, but a consistent feature of Silent Meadow itself. Fog tends to settle in low-lying areas, obscuring the remnants of roads and fences, and creating the sense of a landscape caught between worlds. Shadows appear to move at the edges of vision, sometimes pacing in fields near the barns or along the old dirt paths leading to the schoolhouses. Some visitors report hearing faint, childlike laughter or the distant sound of someone calling out, only for the voices to vanish when investigated. The combination of open space, fog, and the skeletal remains of buildings heightens the feeling of isolation, making the ghostly activity all the more intense and unnerving. The history of Silent Meadow provides insight into the lingering presences. The town once flourished as a close-knit farming community, but repeated tragedies and economic decline gradually emptied it. Fires swept through barns, illnesses claimed entire families, and harsh winters made survival difficult. Many residents left suddenly, abandoning homes and buildings to decay, while others perished on the land they had cultivated for generations. Paranormal researchers believe that these sudden departures and unresolved deaths created strong residual energy, leaving behind echoes of daily routines and unfinished lives. The ghostly silhouettes, footsteps, and whispers are thought to be manifestations of these lingering energies, replaying moments of the past for anyone who enters the area. Encounters at Silent Meadow are rarely singular. Visitors often report experiencing multiple phenomena in a single night. While walking toward a schoolhouse, one witness described seeing a shadow pass quickly across the barnyard. At the same time, the sound of small, hurried footsteps echoed across the dirt floor of the schoolhouse, and a whisper called a name softly from the hallway. Even when the figure is not visible, the presence is palpable, a weight on the air, a sense of being observed by unseen eyes. The layering of sight, sound, and touch creates a fully immersive haunting, one that leaves a lasting impression long after the visitor has left the meadow. The decaying buildings and skeletal trees create long shadows, and the wind carries faint murmurs that seem to respond to movement. But the full intensity of the hauntings emerges at night, when ghostly silhouettes drift through barns and schoolhouses. Soft whispers speak directly to those passing through, and the air itself seems charged with the presence of the past. Silent Meadow is a place where the echoes of life persist long after the living have gone. Shadowy silhouettes appear in abandoned barns and schoolhouses, disappearing when approached. Soft whispers float on the wind, sometimes repeating the visitor's own name, and footsteps and other sounds echo in the empty spaces. The town's history, its tragedies, and its abandonment combine to create a haunting that is both visual and sensory. Anyone who ventures into Silent Meadow after dark enters a space where the past and present intersect, a town forever caught between memory and shadow, where the living brush against echoes of those who never truly left. Whispering Pines, nestled deep in Vilas County, is a town that seems suspended between the present and the past. Its streets are empty, lined with dense pine forests that sway gently in the wind, sending long shadows across cracked pavement. Fog frequently drifts through the town, thick and white, curling around abandoned homes and bending through alleys, giving the impression that the world itself has slowed, or perhaps stopped entirely. Despite the outward stillness, visitors to Whispering Pines often report strange and unsettling phenomena. Ghostly figures moving silently among the trees, faint glowing lights in windows of empty houses, and the sense that the town itself is alive with unseen observers. The forest surrounding Whispering Pines plays a central role in its eerie reputation. Tall pines line the outskirts of the streets, their trunks forming a dense barrier that limits visibility, even in daylight. At night, the fog settles low, muffling sound and obscuring vision. Within this mist, visitors have reported shadowy figures gliding between trees, their forms vaguely humanoid, yet distorted and flickering, as though caught between dimensions. These figures rarely approach directly, instead appearing at the edges of perception, moving deliberately yet silently, as if performing some eternal ritual. When approached, the figures vanish without a trace, leaving only the hushed rustling of pine needles and the occasional echo of footsteps that were never there. The town's abandoned buildings are equally unsettling. Windows often glow briefly, as if lights inside have flickered on, but when visitors investigate, the rooms are empty. Dust motes drifting in the moonlight through cracked panes. Some claim the glow comes from the lingering presence of former residents, their energy trapped in the structures where they once lived. Others suggest it is a residual phenomenon, echoes of life replaying for those who venture into the fog-covered streets at night. Many report a combination of visual and auditory hallucinations, doors that creak open without wind, distant laughter or murmured voices drifting through the trees, and cold drafts that seem to pass through walls. The effect is disorienting, making it difficult to distinguish between what is real and what is spectral projection. One visitor recounted an encounter near the town's old library. Fog rolled in thick waves, obscuring the streetlights, when a shadow appeared among the pines lining the edge of the road. At first, it seemed like a person waiting to cross, but as the visitor stepped closer, the figure elongated and shimmered, then vanished entirely. Moments later, a faint orange glow illuminated one of the library windows. Heart racing, the visitor approached, only to find the room empty. A soft whisper, unintelligible yet insistent, brushed against his ears, and a cold gust swept across the street, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. These simultaneous sensory experiences, sight, sound, and touch, create an immersive haunting that leaves visitors feeling watched, followed, and deeply unsettled. The fog itself seems to have a role in amplifying the town's supernatural presence. It drifts unpredictably, obscuring streets and objects, and seems to carry with it echoes of past life. Visitors often report hearing faint murmurs, footsteps, or even laughter, which vanish when investigated. The combination of fog, darkness, and dense forest makes it nearly impossible to discern the source of these phenomena, heightening the sense of unease. Some theorists suggest the fog acts as a conduit for residual energy, concentrating spiritual impressions and amplifying sensory experiences for anyone walking through the town at night. Whispering Pines has a tragic history that may explain its lingering on. Once a thriving logging and milling community, it suffered a series of misfortunes over decades. Sudden fires, floods, and unexplained disappearances drove most of its residents away. Many homes were abandoned in haste, leaving behind personal belongings, furniture, and small traces of daily life. Others perished in accidents or due to illness, their deaths abrupt and unresolved. Paranormal researchers believe that the combination of abrupt departures and tragic endings left strong spiritual imprints, resulting in the repeated visual and auditory phenomena reported by visitors. Shadowy figures moving silently, fleeting lights in windows, and whispers that call from the fog are all manifestations of this lingering presence. Experiences in Whispering Pines often involve multiple senses at once. A visitor walking down Main Street on a foggy evening may see a shadow pass between trees, hear distant creaking floorboards from an abandoned house, and catch a brief glow from a window across the street. A soft whisper may brush against the ear, repeating a word or name that seems familiar. The effect is cumulative, overwhelming, and immersive, as if the town itself remembers its past in layers of sight, sound, and sensation. Even those who remain skeptical report an uncanny awareness of being observed, a weight in the air that suggests something unseen is watching every movement. Even in daylight, Whispering Pines holds a strange power. The fog is lighter, but the abandoned homes, cracked streets, and encroaching pine forests maintain an eerie presence. Yet, it is at night, when the fog thickens and shadows stretch long, that the full haunting emerges. Figures glide silently among the trees. Windows glow briefly, without lights inside. Whispers call out, and the air grows heavy with unseen attention. The town becomes a stage for a spectral performance, replaying fragments of lifelong past for anyone willing or unlucky enough to walk its empty streets. Whispering Pines is a place where the ordinary laws of perception seem suspended. Fog curls through streets and forests. Ghostly figures move silently among the trees, and windows glow without light. Whispers drift across the empty town, sometimes repeating names or words spoken aloud. The atmosphere is thick with memory, echoing the lives, joys, and tragedies of those who once called the town home. Anyone who ventures into Whispering Pines after dark steps into a space with a living brush against the unseen, where past and present collide, and where the whispers of the departed linger just beyond sight, calling attention to a town that has never truly been abandoned. Dead Man's Crossing, tucked deep in Lincoln County, is a place shrouded in legend and an air of perpetual unease. The old railway that slices through the dense forest and rolling fields has long been abandoned, its tracks rusting and rotting ties slowly being reclaimed by the earth. Despite the absence of trains for decades, the site is far from quiet. Visitors frequently report seeing shadowy shapes crossing the tracks, moving with an unnatural purpose, accompanied by phantom footsteps that echo briefly before vanishing into nothingness. And the dead, where the weight of past tragedies lingers in the air. The most commonly reported phenomenon is the appearance of shadowy figures along the tracks. These figures are often humanoid, sometimes appearing as workers in old clothing or travelers frozen in mid-stride. Witnesses describe them as semi-transparent, blurred at the edges, and moving with a deliberate, silent gait. The figures rarely approach closely. Instead, they cross the tracks at a distance or vanish suddenly when observed directly. The effect is deeply disorienting, creating a sense of being watched or followed by something just beyond perception. Those who have seen the shapes often report a chilling sensation, as if unseen eyes are assessing their every movement. A presence that is both invisible and overwhelmingly tangible. Phantom footsteps are another frequent occurrence. Visitors walking along the tracks in the evening or at night sometimes hear the unmistakable sound of boots striking the wooden ties. The steps vary in tempo, sometimes slow and deliberate, other times hurried, as though someone is running. Yet when observers search for the source, the tracks remain empty, the forest surrounding them silent except for the rustle of leaves in the wind. The footsteps often continue in patterns that mimic someone crossing the railway, pausing, and then continuing onward, as if replaying an event from long ago. In some reports, these footsteps are accompanied by muffled voices, whispered warnings, or unintelligible murmurs carried on the breeze, adding to the haunting atmosphere. The history of Dead Man's Crossing may explain the intensity of its spectral activity. The railway was constructed in the late 19th century and served as a vital link for transporting goods and passengers through Lincoln County. However, the area became notorious for accidents. Collisions, derailments, and sudden deaths occurred with alarming frequency, often leaving bodies lying along the tracks until recovery teams could arrive. Legend holds that some of the deceased were never properly buried, their spirits lingering at the site of their tragic ends. Others believe the figures are echoes of railroad workers and travelers, replaying moments of their lives frozen in time. The combination of abrupt deaths and human suffering left a residue of energy that has persisted long after the trains stopped running. Visitors to Dead Man's Crossing often experience a combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena. One man described walking along the tracks at dusk when he saw a shadowy figure step out from the tree line. Its shape was vague, but it moved with unmistakable purpose. At the same time, he heard a series of steps on the wooden ties behind him, even though no one else was present. A cold gust of wind swept across the tracks, carrying with it the scent of old smoke and iron, a sensory reminder of the trains that once thundered through the area. When he turned to look, the figure had vanished, leaving only the echo of the phantom footsteps fading into silence. Experiences like this are reported repeatedly, suggesting that the hauntings are not isolated incidents but a consistent feature of the crossing itself. The natural environment amplifies the haunting. Tall trees line the railway, their branches forming a dense canopy that casts deep shadows across the tracks. Fog often rolls in from nearby lowlands, curling along the rails and obscuring visibility, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. The combination of fog, shadows, and the ambient sounds of the forest makes it difficult to distinguish between natural and supernatural phenomena. Visitors report that the figures and footsteps often appear and vanish within these pockets of mist, heightening the sense that the crossing is a liminal space, a threshold between the living world and whatever exists beyond. Even during daylight hours, Dead Man's Crossing exudes an unsettling aura. The old ties and rusted rails, long since left to decay, give the impression of neglect and abandonment. Yet the shadowy figures and phantom footsteps are reported most often at twilight or night, when the fading light and creeping fog blur the boundaries between reality and memory. Many visitors describe a feeling of being watched, a weight pressing down on their shoulders, and an overwhelming sense of stillness, broken only by the spectral echoes of human activity long past. Local lore has grown around the crossing. Some believe that the spirits are bound to the railway, replaying the final moments of their lives. Others warn that lingering too long after dark may invite unseen entities to draw closer, to follow the living along the rails indefinitely. The stories have become so pervasive that even casual travelers are cautious when passing through Lincoln County, often avoiding the old tracks entirely after sunset. The tales, repeated over generations, reinforce the eerie reputation of Dead Man's Crossing, making it one of the county's most infamous haunted locations. Dead Man's Crossing is a place where the past refuses to remain buried. Shadowy figures cross the old railway, phantom footsteps echo along decayed ties, and whispers drift through the trees. The dense forest, creeping fog, and decaying infrastructure create an environment steeped in memory and tragedy, where visitors brush against echoes of lives abruptly ended. Anyone venturing along the crossing after dark steps into a world where history and the supernatural collide, a place where the living can witness the remnants of the dead moving silently, their presence lingering long after the trains have stopped running. Fog, hollow, Nestled deep in the forests of Marathon County is a town caught between reality and memory. Its streets lie empty and cracked, lined with aging buildings whose windows stare blankly like eyes long closed. At night, a dense mist rolls through the hollow, curling along sidewalks, seeping into alleyways, and pooling in the low corners of the town. Visitors who venture into Fog Hollow after dark report seeing figures gliding silently along these deserted streets. The shapes are often vague and shadowy, humanoid but indistinct, moving with a calm, deliberate grace. They vanish as quickly as they appear, leaving only a cold, lingering presence and the faint echo of footsteps that were never there. The mist itself seems alive. It carries whisper snippets of conversations and faint murmurs that sound eerily domestic. Travelers have reported hearing voices, discussing routines of long-forgotten lives, the ordering of groceries, the rhythm of morning chores, the chatter of children preparing for school. The words are fragmentary, almost dreamlike, drifting on the night air as if the town itself is replaying moments that have long since vanished. Some visitors claim the mist seems to respond to their presence, thickening and swirling around them, concentrating the sounds, as though guiding them to witness the echoes of the past firsthand. The figures that glide through Fog Hollow are the most unsettling aspect of the hauntings. People often describe them as semi-transparent, with edges that flicker in and out of view. They walk with purpose, pausing at doorways, peering into windows, or lingering near lampposts, then moving on, as if retracing steps from decades ago. Sometimes, 2 or 3 figures appear together, engaged in silent interaction, gestures echoing routines long forgotten. When approached, the figures vanish instantly, leaving only the mist and the faint scent of damp wood or smoke from fires that no longer burn. Witnesses often describe a profound chill that follows their disappearance, a sensation of cold seeping into the bones, as though the air itself remembers the lives once lived in the hollow. Fog Hollow's haunting atmosphere is amplified by the town's architecture and natural environment. The streets are narrow and winding, hemmed in by old brick and wooden buildings that lean slightly with age. Many windows are broken or boarded up, yet visitors often report seeing faint glows within them, as if someone has left a light on for decades. Rusted signs swing in the wind, and cracked sidewalks are overgrown with weeds, creating an unsettling interplay of abandonment and the echoes of domesticity. The mist clings to these structures, obscuring clear sightlines and making the figures appear and disappear unpredictably, heightening the sense of disorientation and unease. The history of Fog Hollow helps explain why the town feels so alive with residual energy. Once a thriving logging and farming community, it prospered in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Families lived in close-knit homes, children played in the streets, and small businesses hummed with activity. But as industry shifted and younger generations moved to urban centers, the town slowly emptied. Many homes were abandoned in haste, leaving behind furniture, clothing, and the remnants of daily life. Some of the remaining residents passed away quietly, their presence lingering in the spaces they once occupied. Paranormal researchers suggest that the town is steeped in residual energy, traces of the lives, routines, and relationships that existed there, replaying themselves through time like a ghostly film. Visitors to Fog Hollow often report experiences that engage multiple senses simultaneously. One woman recalled walking down a fog-choked street when she saw a shadowy figure glide past a storefront. At the same time, she heard a conversation, fragmented but clear, about someone tending a garden and preparing breakfast. A chill ran down her spine, and the mist thickened around her, blurring the figure into the background of the night. She turned, expecting to see more, only to find the street empty, the voices fading as if swallowed by the fog. Such layered phenomena, sight, sound, and touch are characteristic of Fog Hollow, reinforcing the sense that the town is alive with echoes of a past long gone. Even the wind seems to carry memories. Rustling leaves sometimes sound like whispers, and the creak of wooden porches or shutters often resembles faint footsteps approaching and receding. The mist itself interacts with the environment, curling around corners and moving along the streets as though guided by unseen hands. Visitors report feeling observed, followed, and subtly guided, as if the town wants them to witness the routines and movements of its former residents. The experience is immersive and disorienting, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who dares to explore after dark. Shadowy figures and whispered routines have been reported along every main street, in back alleys, and near old homes and abandoned businesses. Some visitors note that the further they venture into the town, the more intense the experiences become. It is as if the center of the hollow holds the strongest memories, drawing the living into a delicate and eerie interplay with the echoes of the past. Fog Hollow is a town where time seems suspended. Figures glide along empty streets at night, mist carries the voices of long-forgotten conversations, and faint lights appear in windows with no source. The combination of natural fog, decaying architecture, and residual energy from a once thriving community creates an environment where the ordinary and the supernatural collide. Visitors walk through a town that is both present and absent, a place where memory lingers in the air, the mist, and the shadowy shapes that drift silently through the streets. Anyone who ventures into Fog Hollow after dark steps into a world where the past and present intertwine, where the echoes of daily life, long gone, continue to play out for those willing or unfortunate enough to witness them. Ashwood, located deep within the forests of Oneida County, is a town that seems frozen in time, its streets lined with abandoned shops and houses that have long since fallen into decay. The sidewalks are cracked, weeds creep through the gaps, and the windows of once thriving businesses stare blankly like empty eyes. By day, the town seems quiet, even serene, but at night, Ashwood reveals a far more unsettling character. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly lights flicker in the windows of abandoned shops, hearing the faint sounds of doors opening and closing, and the sensation of footsteps following them along empty streets. These experiences have earned Ashwood a reputation as one of the most haunted towns in the region, a place where the past seems to persist alongside the present. The most commonly reported phenomenon in Ashwood is the appearance of ghostly lights. These lights are often small and fleeting, flickering in windows that should hold nothing, or appearing to float along the streets as if carried by unseen hands. Witnesses describe them as warm, yellow glows, sometimes pulsing gently, other times flickering in sharp bursts, like the remnants of a gas lamp or lantern long extinguished. No source for the lights can be found, and when approached, they vanish instantly, leaving only the darkness and the long shadows of derelict buildings. For many visitors, the lights are both mesmerizing and terrifying, as they seem to suggest that the town is inhabited by forces that exist outside of time and space. Footsteps and the sounds of doors opening and closing are another hallmark of Ashwood's haunting. Visitors walking down Main Street at night often report hearing the unmistakable creak of wooden floors and the soft thud of footsteps behind them. Sometimes the footsteps appear to match their own pace, walking in perfect harmony, only to stop abruptly or vanish as if the unseen companion has faded into nothingness. Doors swing open and shut in abandoned shops without wind or human intervention, sometimes in a slow, deliberate manner, other times slamming suddenly, echoing down the empty street. These auditory experiences, combined with the sight of flickering lights, create an immersive and disorienting encounter, leaving visitors unsure whether they are being observed by spirits or simply imagining the activity in the still night air. The history of Ashwood offers insight into its eerie atmosphere. Once a thriving logging town, Ashwood prospered in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Sawmills, general stores, and small workshops lined the streets, and the town bustled with workers, families, and merchants. But as the logging industry declined and transportation routes shifted, Ashwood gradually emptied. Buildings were abandoned in haste, leaving behind furniture, tools, and personal belongings. Fires, accidents, and unexplained disappearances contributed to the town's decline. and many locals believe that the tragedies left spiritual imprints, anchoring the energy of past residents to the buildings and streets. The flickering lights, phantom footsteps, and mysterious doors are thought to be manifestations of this lingering presence, echoes of a life once lived but never fully departed. Visitors often experience multiple senses simultaneously while exploring Ashwood. One woman recounted walking past an old bakery at dusk when a warm light flickered inside the display window. At the same moment, she heard the soft creak of the front door opening and then closing behind her. Though she was alone, a chill ran down her spine as she turned to see shadowy figures moving through the fog that had rolled in from the surrounding forest. She tried to approach, but the lights vanished, the footsteps stopped, and the bakery stood silent and empty once more. Such layered experiences, sight, sound, and touch are common in Ashwood, leaving visitors deeply unsettled. The town's natural environment amplifies its haunting. Dense forests encircle Ashwood, their branches forming a canopy that blocks moonlight and allows fog to settle low over the streets. In this heavy mist, sounds are muffled and distorted, and shadows appear elongated and distorted. Visitors report that the ghostly lights often move along the edges of the fog, glimmering through the trees and the darkened windows of abandoned shops. The combination of visual and auditory cues creates an immersive, almost cinematic experience, as if the town itself is replaying fragments of its history for those who wander through after dark. Even in daylight, Ashwood carries an oppressive atmosphere. The decaying buildings, overgrown streets, and scattered remnants of daily life are haunting enough, but the full range of spectral activity emerges at night. Lights flicker in empty windows, footsteps echo in deserted alleys, and doors move as if pushed by invisible hands. Many visitors report feeling watched, an almost physical sensation of unseen eyes tracking their movements, and a subtle pressure in the air that seems to weigh on them as they explore. The town becomes a space where reality is blurred, where the living brush against the residual energy of the dead, and where time seems to fold in upon itself. Local legends warn that lingering too long in Ashwood after dark is dangerous. The ghostly figures and phantom lights may be harmless echoes of the past, some say, but others suggest that the spirits are tethered to the town and may attempt to draw the living into their eternal routines. Tales of visitors being chased by unseen forces, hearing their names whispered repeatedly, or feeling compelled to follow shadowy figures down dark alleys contribute to the town's notoriety. Whether these stories are embellishments or warnings, they reinforce the perception that Ashwood is a place where the dead and the living coexist uneasily. Ashwood is a town where the ordinary laws of perception seem suspended. Ghostly lights appear in abandoned shops, footsteps follow travelers along deserted streets, and doors open and close without cause. The thick mist, dense forests, and decaying architecture create an environment that amplifies the town's spectral activity. Visitors walking its streets after dark are immersed in a haunting replay of life long gone, where the echoes of daily routines, laughter, and movement persist beyond death. Ashwood stands as a reminder that even in abandonment, some places never truly lose the presence of those who once called them home. Black Ridge, situated in the remote forests of Rusk County, is a place shrouded in a sense of perpetual unease. Its narrow roads wind between towering pines, and the landscape is dotted with derelict houses, their paint peeling and windows darkened with decades of neglect. At first glance, the area appears abandoned and silent, but those who venture into Black Ridge after sunset quickly discover that the stillness is deceptive. Shadowy figures are frequently reported pacing in front of the old homes, moving slowly and deliberately, as if retracing steps from long-forgotten lives. Visitors often hear whispers carried by the wind, indistinct at first, but gradually forming words that seem to urge outsiders to leave. The combination of spectral figures, eerie sounds, and the oppressive atmosphere of decay makes Black Ridge one of the most haunting locations in Rusk County. The shadowy figures are the most immediate and unnerving aspect of the hauntings. Witnesses describe them as tall, vaguely human silhouettes, lacking distinct facial features or clothing, yet somehow recognizable as former residents of the area. They pace slowly in front of the old houses, stop at doorways, and occasionally glance toward passersby with an unexplainable awareness. Often, when someone approaches them, the figures vanish into the darkness, leaving only a chilling stillness and a cold gust of wind in their wake. Some visitors have reported seeing multiple figures together, moving in a coordinated pattern as if enacting routines from a bygone era. Their presence is accompanied by an almost tangible weight in the air, a sense of being observed by unseen eyes that seems to press down on the chest and shoulders. Whispers are another hallmark of Black Ridge's haunted reputation. The wind itself seems to carry voices, soft at first, then clearer, as if forming words from the rustling of leaves and the creaking of old structures. Travelers frequently report hearing phrases like "go back," "leave this place," or murmurs that resemble fragments of long-past conversations. The whispers are not constant, but appear at moments of heightened tension. When a visitor pauses near a house, turns a corner on the dark road, or ventures too close to a window. For those unprepared, the combination of shadowy figures and disembodied voices can provoke a sense of dread so intense that turning back feels like the only option. The derelict houses themselves contribute to the eerie atmosphere. Many were built in the late 1800s. As families moved away and industries shifted, the homes fell into disrepair. Broken shutters sway in the wind, rotted porches groan under non-existent weight, and windows are either cracked or boarded up. Even during daylight hours, the structures convey a sense of decay and abandonment. But after dark, they become stages for the spectral figures and the whispering winds. Visitors often note the faint glow of light behind windows where none should exist, or shadows moving inside rooms that have been empty for decades. These fleeting glimpses reinforce the sense that Black Ridge is a place where the past refuses to stay buried. The haunting of Black Ridge is also shaped by its natural surroundings. The dense forests surrounding the area absorb sound and distort perception, making distant noises appear closer and creating sudden pockets of shadow. Fog occasionally rolls in from low-lying areas, clinging to the road and creeping along the edges of houses. In these moments, the shadowy figures become more distinct, gliding along streets or pausing near corners. The whispers carried on the wind are amplified, seemingly coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Visitors describe feeling disoriented, as if the town itself has shifted in ways that defy logic, folding the living and the spectral together into a shared, uneasy space. Many visitors to Black Ridge report experiences that engage multiple senses simultaneously. One man described walking past a long-abandoned farmhouse when he saw a shadowy figure pacing in front of the door. At the same moment, he heard a faint creak of the floorboards behind him, though no one else was present. A cold gust of wind blew past, carrying the unmistakable scent of smoke and old wood. When he turned back to the house, the figure had vanished, leaving only a lingering chill and a sense of being watched. Similar accounts are reported repeatedly. Figures seen in peripheral vision, whispers that vanish when attended to, and a pervasive feeling of being pursued by unseen eyes. The history of Black Ridge adds context to its haunted reputation. Once a small logging and farming community, the town suffered a slow decline as economic opportunities vanished. Fires, accidents, and unexplained deaths left an imprint on the landscape. And locals say that the spirits of those who perished still linger among the homes and streets. Some legends suggest that the town itself became protective of its dead, sending warnings to outsiders in the form of whispers and spectral figures. These stories, passed down through generations, reinforce the idea that Black Ridge is a threshold between the living and the dead, a place where the past persists stubbornly alongside the present. The haunting is not limited to a single location within Black Ridge. Shadowy figures are seen pacing in front of multiple homes. Whispers rise from the forests, and unexplained lights appear in various windows. The further visitors venture into the hollowed streets, the more intense the phenomena become. Shadowy figures pace in front of derelict houses. Ghostly whispers rise with the wind, and lights appear in abandoned windows with no source. The dense forests, cracked streets, and decaying buildings create an environment in which past and present collide. Those who dare to wander through Black Ridge after sunset find themselves immersed in a spectral world that refuses to be ignored, a place where the past watches, waits, and whispers. Deadwood Village, tucked deep in the forests of Taylor County, is a town where time seems frozen in decay, and the boundary between the living and the dead grows thin. Its streets are lined with abandoned homes and shops, their wooden frames rotting and windows staring blankly like hollow eyes. Sidewalks are cracked, and weeds have claimed the once busy pathways. By day, the village appears desolate but ordinary, a quiet remnant of a bygone era. At night, however, the town awakens in an entirely different way. Visitors report seeing spectral children darting through the streets, their laughter faint but unmistakable, only to vanish suddenly as they pass through walls or disappear behind corners. The ghostly children of Deadwood Village are among the most commonly reported phenomena. They run down empty streets, chase one another between abandoned houses, and sometimes pause to peer into darkened windows before disappearing entirely. Witnesses frequently report a fleeting sense of innocence mixed with unease. The children appear happy and unaware of the living intruders. Yet their sudden vanishings and the inexplicable nature of their movements create a lingering tension. Many ascribe hearing their laughter or the soft tapping of tiny footsteps on the cracked pavements, a sound that seems to echo long after the figures have vanished. Lanterns are another eerie hallmark of Deadwood Village's hauntings. In abandoned shops and homes, small lights flicker as if someone inside is moving about. They glow warmly at times, then dim or vanish entirely, leaving only darkness. Many children's lives were cut short, and local legends claim that the spirits of these young souls continued to play and wander the streets. Unable to leave the village that shaped their brief lives, the spectral children seem to reflect not only past presence, but also emotion, their playful movements, a remnant of innocence and a poignant reminder of lives interrupted. He moved closer, but the figures vanished, the laughter faded, and the lantern's glow dimmed to nothing. This combination of sight, sound, and a tactile sense of presence is common in the village, making encounters intensely vivid and, for many, deeply unsettling. The surrounding environment amplifies these experiences. Dense forests encircle Deadwood Village, their shadows blending with the darkness of abandoned streets. Fog often drifts through the town, muffling sounds and creating an ever-shifting landscape of light and shadow. The wind seems to carry whispers and laughter, bending and twisting around corners and buildings, as if the village itself is trying to communicate with visitors. Paths that appear straight can suddenly feel curved, and familiar landmarks may seem distorted, adding to the disorientation and the sense that the village exists partially out of step with the present. The hauntings of Deadwood Village are not isolated to specific streets or buildings. Children are seen running and disappearing in multiple areas. Lanterns flicker in various windows, and whispers can be heard throughout the village. The further a visitor explores, the more intense and frequent the experiences become. The sounds and sights often combine, layering into a complex sensory tableau that feels immersive and alive. Many who have visited report a sense of being followed by unseen eyes, or feeling drawn toward areas where the activity is strongest, only to find nothing once they arrive. Deadwood Village is a place where the past refuses to remain hidden. Ghostly children run through empty streets, lanterns flicker in abandoned windows, and whispers echo through the fog and trees. The abandoned buildings and cracked streets serve as vessels for memories and energies long departed, yet remarkably persistent. Visitors who venture after dark step into a town where the living brush against the spectral remnants of ordinary life, where laughter and light coexist with silence and decay, and where the echoes of long-gone residents continue to play across streets that time has left behind. Deadwood Village is a reminder that even in abandonment, some places never truly lose the presence of those who once called them home. Mistville, located deep within the forests of Bayfield County, is a place that seems untouched by time, yet curiously out of step with the present. Its narrow, winding streets are flanked by dilapidated homes and overgrown yards. Wooden fences lean at odd angles, and abandoned barns sag under the weight of decades. During the day, Mistville appears quiet and forlorn, a relic of a past era, but as dusk falls, the town transforms into a place where the ordinary laws of reality seem suspended. Visitors often report seeing figures of men and women moving silently through the streets, performing tasks as if the town were still alive. The figures are ghostly in appearance, sometimes only visible at the edge of vision, yet their movements are precise and deliberate. The spectral figures are perhaps the most unnerving aspect of Mistville. Witnesses describe men in work clothes carrying tools or tending to invisible tasks, women sweeping floors or tending to gardens long overgrown, Hollow Pine, nestled in the remote stretches of Ashland County, is a place where silence is misleading and shadows hold memories that refuse to fade. The town appears unremarkable at first glance, its streets lined with abandoned homes, overgrown lawns, and cracked sidewalks that hint at decades of neglect. Yet those who venture into Hollow Pine after dark soon discover that the ordinary surface masks something far more unsettling. Whispers rise from the fractured sidewalks, faint at first, like the murmuring of unseen voices carried on the night wind. Shadowy shapes materialize beneath the gnarled pines lining the streets, moving with deliberate purpose, only to vanish when approached. The shadowy shapes are the most commonly reported phenomena in Hollow Pine. They linger beneath trees, sometimes pacing slowly along the sidewalks, other times standing motionless as if waiting for something or someone. When visitors attempt to approach, the figures dissolve into the darkness, leaving behind only an oppressive sense of being watched. Some report seeing them gliding silently across streets, while others claim to glimpse them reflected in broken windows before they vanish. The effect is disorienting, creating the impression that the town itself bends around these spectral presences, folding reality into a space where shadows and perception intermingle. Whispers are another hallmark of Hollow Pine's eerie reputation. For those unprepared, the auditory component of Hollow Pine's hauntings can be as unsettling as the visual apparitions themselves. The hauntings are not confined to a single street or building. Shadowy figures can appear beneath different trees, along multiple sidewalks, and even near the edges of the forests. Whispers follow visitors, regardless of the path taken, and sudden gusts of cold air accompany the most vivid apparitions. Some who linger too long report feeling a pressure on their chest, the sensation of unseen eyes observing, or the eerie impression that the town is aware of their presence and is communicating its displeasure at intrusions. The further one ventures into Hollow Pine at night, the more intense the layering of sights, sounds, and sensations becomes, until the town itself feels alive with both memory and intention. And the environment itself seems to bend to accommodate these spectral phenomena. Decaying buildings, dense forests, and drifting fog create a space where past and present intersect, where shadows act out memories long ended, and where visitors feel observed even when no one is there. Those who explore Hollow Pine after dark find themselves immersed in a town that is both abandoned and alive, a place where the echoes of the past persist in every shadow, every whisper, and every flicker of unseen light. It is a village that warns, observes, and remembers, leaving an indelible impression on anyone who dares to enter its silent, haunted streets. Raven Hill, tucked away in the remote corners of Douglas County, is a town that seems frozen in time, yet quietly alive with the echoes of the past. Its streets, once bustling with life, are now cracked and overgrown, lined with abandoned homes and empty storefronts. At first glance, the town appears desolate, an ordinary relic of a bygone era. But as night falls, Raven Hill transforms into a place where the familiar and the spectral intertwine. Ghostly apparitions are frequently reported at intersections, standing silently or moving with deliberate purpose. Visitors often hear indistinct conversations drifting through the empty streets, as if the town itself were replaying fragments of lives long ended. The experience is unnerving, for the town feels both abandoned and watched, its presence lingering just beyond the edge of perception. The apparitions of Raven Hill are varied and unpredictable. Witnesses describe figures that resemble the town's former residents, dressed in clothing from decades past. Men in overcoats and women in long skirts appear at crossroads, sometimes standing motionless, sometimes walking along the cracked pavement before vanishing when approached. Their faces are often indistinct, blurred as if partially out of focus. Yet their movements carry a lifelike quality that makes them impossible to ignore. Some visitors report seeing children darting across empty streets, pausing to glance toward them before dissolving into shadows. The apparitions do not interact aggressively with the living, but their silent presence is overwhelming, leaving observers with a profound sense of unease. Indistinct conversations form a second layer of haunting in Raven Hill. They often sound like snippets of conversations, fragments of arguments, or casual chatter frozen in time. Many visitors report hearing phrases that seem to come from multiple sources at once, layered over each other like echoes of different moments converging. Some claim the voices repeat their own names or comment on their presence, heightening the sense of being observed. The auditory experiences are disorienting, making it difficult to discern whether the sounds are real, imagined, or produced by the lingering energy of the town itself. The architecture of Raven Hill amplifies its spectral atmosphere. Many buildings are well over a century old, with rotting wooden facades, sagging roofs, and windows boarded or broken. Storefronts that once displayed goods now reveal only shadows and dust, and the interiors of homes are cluttered with remnants of life left behind. Floors creak under no discernible weight, doors swing open and closed without wind, and faint flickers of light appear in windows with no electrical source. The town's layout, with narrow streets winding between decaying structures, creates numerous vantage points from which visitors glimpse apparitions, often catching only fleeting glimpses before they disappear. This combination of architectural decay and spectral presence makes the town feel simultaneously tangible and unreal. Raven Hill's history helps explain its haunting reputation. Once a thriving mining and logging community, the town experienced a sharp decline in the early 20th century. Families left in search of work, businesses closed, and the town slowly emptied. Accidents, illness, and misfortune claimed the lives of residents, leaving behind stories of tragedy and loss. The ghostly figures and murmured conversations are believed to be echoes of daily life, memories replaying themselves endlessly. Some suggest that the town's energy is imprinted with human presence so strongly that it continues to manifest these apparitions for anyone willing to witness them. Visitors often recount multisensory experiences that enhance the unnerving nature of Raven Hill. One man described walking through the town square at twilight when he saw a figure standing at a street corner, its head turning as if following him. At the same time, he heard faint chatter, indistinct but layered with urgency, drifting from the direction of an abandoned building. As he approached, the figure dissolved into shadow, leaving only the distant echo of voices and a chill in the air. Others report hearing footsteps following them along empty streets. The creak of rocking chairs on porches, or the whisper of clothing as figures pass unseen. These combined visual and auditory elements create an immersive haunting, making the town feel alive despite its abandonment. The natural environment surrounding Raven Hill contributes to its eerie ambience. Thick woods border the town, casting long shadows and muffling distant sounds. Fog often rolls in during the evening, softening edges and creating a dreamlike quality where figures can appear and vanish without warning. Wind, through the trees, produces rustling sounds that blend with whispers and footsteps, adding unpredictability to the experience. The combination of darkness, mist, and sound enhances the perception of ghostly activity, making it difficult for visitors to separate reality from the lingering echoes of the past. Haunting activity is not restricted to a single street or building. Apparitions can appear at intersections, along narrow lanes, or at the entrances of abandoned homes. The indistinct conversations follow visitors wherever they go, layering the experience with auditory clues that are never fully intelligible. Some who linger after dark report feelings of pressure, as if unseen eyes are watching, or a sensation of being guided or even urged to leave. The layering of visual, auditory, and tactile impressions contributes to a pervasive sense of unease, leaving many visitors eager to exit but simultaneously fascinated by the town's lingering energy. Raven Hill is a place where time feels fluid, where past and present converge in fleeting moments of recognition. Ghostly figures appear at intersections, moving silently through streets long abandoned. Whispered conversations drift through the air, echoing from empty homes and overgrown yards. The town's decaying architecture, dense surrounding forests, and frequent fog create a space where ordinary perception falters and the echoes of history dominate experience. Those who explore Raven Hill after dark encounter a living memory, a spectral tableau where the unseen presence of former residents lingers in every shadow, every whisper, and every flicker of light. It is a town that remembers, watches, and quietly replays its past for anyone who dares to step into its streets. Silent Ridge, nestled deep within the dense woods of Forest County, is a place where the ordinary bends into the uncanny. By day, the town appears quiet but unremarkable. Narrow alleys wind between modest homes. Tall pines tower overhead, and the faint hum of distant wildlife permeates the air. Some visitors describe hearing fragments of conversations or murmured warnings, while others feel as though the town itself is attempting to communicate, reminding them of the lives that once moved through these now empty streets. The combination of temperature anomalies and whispering voices reinforces the sense that Silent Ridge is not merely a town abandoned by its residents, but one haunted by the echoes of those who once lived there. The town's architecture amplifies the spectral presence. Many homes are old, their wooden frames weathered and sagging, windows cracked or boarded over, and paint peeling from walls. Porches groan as if under invisible weight, doors swing open and close without wind, and floorboards creak under no discernible pressure. Abandoned stores and community buildings reveal shadows moving behind broken glass, flickers of light that seem to mimic lanterns once used to illuminate daily life. The alleyways themselves, narrow and winding, create numerous vantage points for glimpsing these ghostly figures, often catching them only in peripheral vision. This architectural decay, combined with the dense tree cover, fog, and dim moonlight, transforms the town into a living tableau of memory and unease. Visitors frequently describe multisensory experiences that heighten the town's haunting. One woman recounted walking down an alley toward a broken-down home when she noticed a figure pacing near a tree. As she watched, the figure's shadow stretched unnaturally, then dissolved into darkness. Simultaneously, she heard faint murmurs, fragments of names that seemed familiar but unplaceable, and a sudden gust of cold air swept over her, carrying with it the scent of damp wood and earth. Another man reported hearing footsteps behind him on a street where no other person was present, coupled with whispering that seemed to echo from the walls of abandoned buildings. These layered experiences of sight, sound, and sensation create an immersive haunting that lingers long after visitors leave. The history of Silent Ridge provides context for its eerie reputation. Accidents, illness, and tragedies took their toll, leaving behind empty streets and homes that slowly decayed. Locals speak of the town's spirits as remnants of these lives, caught between the past and the present. The figures pacing the alleys are often believed to be reenactments of everyday routines or the replaying of moments frozen in time. Whispers of forgotten names may be echoes of lost connections. The voices of those who once lived in the town calling out to those who pass by, perhaps in hope, warning, or memory. Fog often rolls through the town in the late evening, softening edges and casting diffused light across cracked sidewalks. The rustle of leaves, the creak of dead branches, and the distant call of nocturnal wildlife mix with the whispers and footsteps, blurring the line between natural sounds and supernatural phenomena. Fogbound, in the remote reaches of Langlade County, is a town that seems perpetually shrouded in mist. By day, it looks like a quiet, forgotten settlement, with streets cracked from decades of neglect and abandoned buildings leaning against the weight of time. The town's layout is a maze of narrow streets and alleys, bordered by homes and storefronts, long vacated. Yet, it is at night, when the fog thickens and swallows the edges of the streets, that Fogbound reveals its more sinister character. Shadowy figures glide along these streets, moving with a silent grace that seems both deliberate and unearthly. Windows flicker with light, though no bulbs burn and no one lives within. The town becomes a stage for the lingering echoes of its past, replayed for anyone who dares to walk its empty roads. Visitors often first notice a subtle change in the atmosphere as they enter Fogbound after sunset. The air grows dense and cold, carrying the scent of damp wood and decaying leaves. Sounds are muted, muffled by the ever-present fog. Yet every small noise, the creak of a shutter, the tap of footsteps on broken pavement feels amplified. It is during this uneasy stillness that figures begin to appear. They are not solid in form. They seem to glide rather than walk, their edges blurred and constantly shifting as though caught between this world and another. People describe them as human-shaped, often wearing clothing reminiscent of eras long past. And their presence is almost magnetic, drawing the gaze despite the fear they inspire. The movement of these figures is disconcerting. They pace the streets with no clear destination, sometimes pausing as though observing visitors, sometimes vanishing into shadows when approached. A single alley may contain more than one figure, each moving independently, yet all sharing the same quiet intent. Some visitors report seeing figures appear in pairs, silently conversing or performing gestures that mimic long-forgotten routines. Others claim to witness solitary figures staring from the fog, then disappearing the moment a light catches them. There is no aggression in their movements, only a persistent, haunting presence that seems to replay fragments of life from decades before. Lights flickering inside the abandoned windows add another layer of unease. These flashes are brief and irregular, revealing nothing within the empty rooms. Some visitors describe seeing a faint glow, as if from a candle or lantern, only for the light to vanish moments later. Others witness a steady flicker that moves across the window pane, as if someone or something is walking behind it. No source is ever found. Electricity has long been disconnected from the buildings, and the interiors remain empty and decayed. The light's presence gives the impression that the town is alive in some spectral sense, replaying moments of domestic life frozen in time. The combination of ghostly figures and flickering lights is accompanied by other, subtler phenomena. Many report cold drafts that appear suddenly, brushing across the skin with no apparent source. Some feel a weight on their chest or an invisible presence following them as they walk through streets and alleys. Whispers often accompany these sensations, though their words are nearly impossible to understand. Visitors sometimes hear their own names or fragments of conversations that seem lifted from the town's past. The layering of these auditory, visual, and tactile experiences creates a sense of disorientation, as if the town itself is bending perception to its will. Fogbound's architecture amplifies the eerie ambience. Houses lean precariously, their siding rotted and windows cracked. Storefronts reveal dust-covered counters and empty shelves behind broken glass. Streets are narrow and uneven, bordered by sidewalks that have buckled under years of neglect. Alleyways wind unpredictably between buildings, providing vantage points for glimpsing figures in fleeting moments. The dense fog often obscures entire structures, making them appear partially unreal, like images projected onto the night. The town's decay, combined with the movement of figures and the flicker of phantom light, creates a haunting visual tapestry that lingers in memory long after one leaves. The history of Fogbound offers hints as to why it remains haunted. Once a small but thriving logging and milling town, it suffered economic collapse in the mid-20th century. Families left, businesses closed, and the town gradually emptied. Accidents, illness, and tragedies claimed lives, leaving an indelible mark on the town's collective memory. Local legends speak of spirits trapped within fog-bound streets, bound to the places they once lived or worked. Shadowy figures are thought to be manifestations of these lingering souls, enacting routines, watching over familiar places, or simply wandering without awareness of the living world. The flickering lights, too, are often attributed to spectral echoes of domestic life residual energy, repeating moments of warmth and human activity. Visitors to Fogbound frequently describe multisensory encounters. One man recounted walking past an abandoned shop when a figure glided across the street ahead of him. The fog thickened, obscuring the figure's details, while a flickering light appeared in a nearby window, casting a brief shadow across the street. At the same moment, he felt a cold draft pass his shoulders and heard the whisper of a name he did not recognize. Another visitor reported seeing multiple figures pacing silently along intersecting streets, their shadows stretching and shifting unnaturally in the fog, while distant flickers of light traced the outlines of empty windows. These experiences leave a lasting impression, a combination of wonder, fear, and disorientation that defines the town's haunted character. Fogbound is a place where time feels suspended, where past and present blur into a continuous, spectral narrative. Shadowy figures glide silently along deserted streets. Flickering lights appear in empty windows, and cold drafts carry whispers of forgotten names. The town's decayed architecture, dense fog, and thickly wooded surroundings create an environment that is both tangible and otherworldly. Those who walk its streets after dark are drawn into a haunting experience, where every shadow, every flicker of light, and every whispered word reminds them that in Fogbound, the past never truly dies, and the memories of those who lived there linger, waiting to be witnessed once more. Misty Hollow, nestled in the rolling hills of Oconto County, is a place where the past lingers with an almost tangible presence. The town itself appears quaint and quiet by day, with its modest homes, weathered churches, and small cemeteries dotting the landscape. Yet, as dusk falls and the fog begins to settle over the hills, the familiar scenery transforms. Streets grow silent, the air becomes dense and cool, and the ordinary hum of nature fades into a haunting stillness. It is during these hours that Misty Hollow reveals its spectral character. Visitors report seeing fleeting figures near old churches and gravestones, shadowy forms that vanish the moment they are approached. The whispers of long-departed voices rise and fall with the wind, carrying fragments of conversation, warnings, and mournful lamentations that seem to originate from the very soil itself. The figures that appear in Misty Hollow are ethereal and unsettling. People describe them as human-shaped shadows, often appearing briefly at the edges of vision before dissolving into the mist. Some move deliberately, pacing near churchyards, standing near tombstones, or wandering through overgrown pathways, while others seem to drift without purpose, as if caught in routines that no longer have meaning. Their appearances are fleeting, yet unforgettable, leaving an impression that the town itself is alive with memories that refuse to fade. On occasion, multiple figures are seen at once, standing in silence or performing gestures that suggest rituals or daily routines from a time long past. Observers often feel an intense awareness of being watched, as though these spirits are aware of the living yet remain bound to the remnants of their former lives. The cemeteries of Misty Hollow are particularly active in the experiences of visitors. Gravestones rise from the fog like islands in a sea of mist, their inscriptions weathered and difficult to read. Shadowy figures are often seen standing beside headstones or gliding between rows of graves. Some visitors describe hearing faint sobs, murmured names, or whispered prayers that vanish as soon as attention is focused. The fog seems to carry these sounds, drifting across the landscape and growing louder or softer depending on the observer's movement. Occasionally, fleeting glimpses of figures kneeling or bowing over graves are reported, only to vanish as the observer approaches. The churches of Misty Hollow, many of them abandoned or minimally used, serve as focal points for spectral activity. Windows, dark and weathered, sometimes glow with an unexplainable light, flickering briefly as if candle flames burn within. Shadowy figures are seen passing across doorways, standing silently in pews, or moving along the exterior walls. Visitors recount feelings of sudden chills, a sense of unseen eyes upon them, and the soft, disembodied whispers that seem to originate both inside and outside the buildings simultaneously. The architecture, with its aged wood, creaking floors, and crumbling steeples, amplifies the otherworldly presence. The wind plays a crucial role in the haunting atmosphere of Misty Hollow. Some hear names called softly, fragments of conversations from decades past, or cryptic phrases that suggest unfinished business. The combination of wind and fog amplifies the sensation that the town is alive, a place where the memory of those long gone is constantly pressing against the present. The natural elements, in concert with the spectral figures, create an immersive and disorienting experience for anyone walking the streets at night. Misty Hollow's roads, alleys, and pathways all contribute to the town's haunted character. Narrow, winding streets lead visitors past overgrown yards and abandoned homes. Shadowy figures are glimpsed pacing along these routes, vanishing when approached or seemingly merging with the fog. Broken fences, cracked sidewalks, and the skeletal remains of gardens add to the sense of abandonment, while the persistent presence of the past reinforces the feeling that the town exists. On the boundary between the living and the spectral, visitors often report a heightened sense of awareness. As every shadow and whisper becomes significant, every flicker of light and movement a potential encounter with the unseen. The town's history explains much of its lingering presence. Once a small but vibrant community, Misty Hollow thrived around local farming, logging, and church-centered social life. Economic decline, disease, and accidents gradually emptied the town, leaving behind structures filled with memory and energy. Local lore suggests that the spirits are residents unwilling or unable to leave, repeating moments of their daily lives or attending to unfinished business. The spectral figures near churches may be continuing prayers or rituals, while those in cemeteries may be tending to graves long abandoned. The whispers carried by the wind are often interpreted as echoes of these lives, repeating in perpetuity to anyone who enters the town at night. Visitors to Misty Hollow often describe encounters that engage multiple senses. One woman recalled standing near an old churchyard when a faint figure appeared at the edge of the fog. The figure moved silently, pausing by a gravestone before vanishing. At the same time, she felt a cold draft brush her shoulder and heard a whispered name that seemed impossibly familiar. Another visitor reported walking along a side street when he glimpsed two figures gliding past abandoned homes. Lantern-like flickers appeared briefly in windows, accompanied by the distant sound of murmured conversation that vanished as he approached. These experiences leave a lingering impression, creating a haunting that persists long after one leaves the town. Misty Hollow is a place where the past remains ever present. Fleeting figures move silently near old churches and cemeteries. Whispered voices rise and fall with the wind, and the fog drapes the town in an atmosphere of suspended time. Abandoned buildings, narrow streets, and overgrown pathways combine with the spectral activity to create an environment that is both tangible and otherworldly. Visitors who walk the town at night find themselves immersed in a haunting experience where every shadow, every flicker of light, and every whispered word serves as a reminder that in Misty Hollow, dark water, in the remote stretches of Price County, is a town caught between time and memory, where the remnants of industry linger alongside the whispers of the past. At first glance, it appears to be little more than a cluster of abandoned buildings and overgrown streets. But anyone who ventures here at dusk quickly realizes that dark water is far from empty. The air is thick with mist that rises from the nearby river, curling around the foundations of old watermills and slipping through the skeletal remains of warehouses and homes. It is in this enveloping fog that visitors report the first signs of the supernatural. Figures pacing near the ruins of the watermills, moving with a deliberate, almost ritualistic rhythm, their forms blurred as if caught between the present world and another. These spectral figures are the hallmark of Darkwater's haunting. Observers describe them as vaguely human, their outlines flickering in and out of focus, often wearing clothing reminiscent of the town's industrial heyday. Some move slowly, their heads bowed as though weighed down by unseen burdens, while others pace with a restless energy, retracing the steps they once took in life. The figures rarely acknowledge the living, vanishing if approached directly or dissolving into the mist when a flashlight beam touches them. Visitors report a strange sense of being observed, as if the town itself is aware of their presence, silently recording their passage through the streets and along the banks of the river. The old watermills are central to the haunting of Darkwater, once vital to the town's economy. Grinding grain and powering machinery for nearby industries, they now stand silent and decayed. Yet, at night, visitors claim to hear the faint groaning and clattering of machinery. Though no engines run and no gears turn, the sounds are accompanied by ghostly whispers that rise from the foundations, carrying fragments of conversation, instructions, and warnings from workers long dead. The echoes are not constant. They ebb and flow with the wind, sometimes swelling into the cacophony of a full mill in operation, only to fade into silence moments later. These phantom sounds create an unsettling illusion that the town is alive with spectral labor, the echoes of industry frozen in time. The river that runs through Darkwater enhances the eerie atmosphere. Its waters reflect the fog and the dim light of the moon, and on calm nights, visitors claim to see figures standing at the water's edge, their reflections distorted in the dark currents. Occasionally, shadowy forms are seen moving along the riverbank, pacing in tandem with the figures at the mills. And murmurs that echo across the surface, merging with the creaks and groans of long-abandoned machinery. The combination of flowing water, fog, and spectral activity makes the environment feel suspended, as if the town exists outside conventional time and space. Visitors frequently describe multisensory encounters in Darkwater. One man reported walking along the river near the main mill when a shadowy figure appeared on the deck, pacing back and forth. As he drew closer, he felt a sudden cold breeze wrap around him, carrying a faint scent of oil and wet wood, and heard what sounded like whispered instructions in a language he could not comprehend. By the time he reached the deck, the figure had vanished, leaving only the soft echo of footsteps and a lingering chill. Another visitor recounted seeing several figures moving along the foundation of a secondary mill, their motions synchronized as though performing tasks from decades ago. Ghostly lights flickered inside the broken windows, and the soft sound of machinery running invisibly accompanied the scene, creating a haunting tableau of work and lifelong extinguished. The streets and alleys of Darkwater amplify the town's spectral character. Narrow lanes wind between abandoned homes and warehouses, their facades crumbling and windows shattered. Broken fences, rusting tools, and overgrown yards add to the sense of abandonment. Yet the presence of these spectral workers and wanderers makes it clear that the town is far from empty. Even in the quietest areas, visitors report sudden cold drafts, the soft sound of footsteps following them, and the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. Every shadow seems alive, every movement in the fog carries a suggestion of intent, and the town's history is palpable in every interaction with the supernatural. The history of Darkwater offers insight into the origins of these hauntings. Once a thriving hub of milling and small industry, the town suffered economic collapse as machinery became obsolete and resources dwindled. Families left, mills shut down, and accidents claimed lives, leaving a lasting imprint on the landscape. Locals tell of workers who died in falls, machinery accidents, and river mishaps. And it is believed that these spirits linger, repeating familiar routines or tending to tasks that were never completed. The fog that rolls through the town each night is said to carry their memories, a spectral veil that both reveals and conceals the presence of the dead. Visitors to Darkwater often recount experiences that linger long after leaving the town. Some feel a heavy weight pressing on their shoulders, as if the unseen workers are reminding them of the town's history. Others hear whispers that follow them even after they step off the riverbanks or away from the mills. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena creates an experience that is immersive and unforgettable. a haunting that engages the senses and imagination simultaneously. Darkwater is a town suspended in both fog and memory. Figures glide silently near the old watermills. The echoes of long-dead machinery resonate across the streets, and whispers rise and fall with the wind, carrying fragments of the lives that once animated this place. The river mirrors the spectral forms and adds its own chorus of whispers and echoes, while abandoned streets and derelict buildings form a stage for the lingering past. Visitors who enter Darkwater at night find themselves enveloped in a haunting world, where every shadow, every flicker of light, and every whispered sound serves as a reminder that in this mist-shrouded town, the echoes of industry and life never truly fade, and the spirits of those who lived there continue their silent, eternal vigil. Hollow Glen, tucked away in the quiet stretches of Shawano County, is a place where the echoes of childhood linger long after the laughter has faded. By day, it seems an unremarkable rural area, dotted with overgrown fields, crumbling schoolhouses, and abandoned homes. But as twilight settles over the landscape, the familiar becomes unsettling. The fog creeps low along the hills, curling around the decaying structures, and a strange stillness falls over the land. It is during these hours that Hollow Glen reveals its haunting presence, drawing the attention of curious visitors and local storytellers alike. Ghostly children are often seen near the old schoolhouses, their small forms flitting across the grounds as though caught in an endless game, while faint laughter rises on the wind, chilling those who hear it. The schoolhouses of Hollow Glen, long abandoned and weathered by decades of neglect, serve as focal points for the paranormal activity. At night, faint lights are sometimes glimpsed within the empty classrooms, though no electricity remains. Shadowy figures move across hallways and yards, disappearing when approached, leaving only the impression of fleeting movement. Legends speak of children lost to illness or accidents, their lives cut tragically short, and their spirits lingering in the places where they once played and learned. Shadow Vale, nestled deep within the forests of Vilas County, is a place where the ordinary bends into the eerie, and the night seems to breathe with unseen life. By day, the town appears quiet and unassuming, with small cottages, empty streets, and dense woods hemming the horizon. But as twilight descends, the atmosphere transforms. A heavy fog rolls in from the surrounding trees, swallowing the streets and muffling the sounds of the natural world. It is in this thick, rolling mist that the true nature of Shadow Vale reveals itself. Visitors who wander its streets after dark often speak of sudden chills that crawl up their spines, the sensation of unseen eyes watching them, and footsteps echoing that do not match their own. It is along these fog-covered avenues that shadowy figures glide, moving with a fluid, almost unnatural grace. They are seldom seen clearly. Their forms are blurred and indistinct, often disappearing entirely when approached. Locals claim that these figures are echoes of the town's past, wandering the streets as they did in life, yet trapped in a spectral limbo. Visitors report glimpsing silhouettes in windows or at the corners of their vision, only to find nothing when they turn their gaze directly. The figures seem to move with purpose, pacing along empty lanes, passing through fences, or vanishing into walls, leaving behind a cold that lingers long after they have gone. Footsteps are another common phenomenon in Shadow Vale, described as hauntingly inconsistent. A visitor may walk down a deserted street and hear the unmistakable sound of someone following, their steps matching neither pace nor rhythm. Sometimes the footsteps are rapid and erratic, other times slow and deliberate, echoing off the empty buildings as if the town itself is amplifying the sound. These phantom steps can appear on rooftops, behind doors, or along alleyways, giving the unsettling impression that unseen residents are navigating the town in parallel to the living. The dissonance between what one sees and what one hears heightens the sense of unreality, leaving visitors questioning the boundary between the natural and the supernatural. Fog is Shadow Vale's most potent tool in shaping the haunting experience. It curls through streets and alleys, around the corners of houses, and between trees, creating an environment where visibility is always limited. Within this veil, the spectral figures move with eerie fluidity, appearing and disappearing without warning. The fog also carries voices, faint and indistinct, which seem to rise and fall with the wind. Some visitors report whispers that echo fragments of past conversations, warnings, or calls to names long forgotten. Others claim to hear laughter or murmurs of sorrow, carried just beyond reach, leaving the mind to fill in the gaps. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena creates a disorienting, immersive experience, making it easy to believe that the town is alive with unseen inhabitants. Abandoned buildings add another layer of haunting to Shadowvale. Old homes, shuttered shops, and crumbling facades line the streets, each a silent witness to the town's history. Figures are often glimpsed passing through these structures, standing at windows, or drifting along hallways, visible only as fleeting shadows. Doors may open or close on their own, and floorboards groan under invisible weight. Visitors have described sudden cold drafts that sweep through their bodies, often preceding the appearance of a figure or a mysterious sound. These interactions, though brief, leave lasting impressions, as if the town itself is interacting with those who wander too far into its spectral depths. The origin of Shadowvale's hauntings is said to stem from the town's decline. Once a bustling community centered around logging and small-scale industry, the area slowly emptied as economic opportunities dwindled. Families left, businesses closed, and buildings fell into decay. According to local lore, those who remained, particularly children and workers, met untimely deaths from accidents, illness, or tragic events, leaving a lingering imprint on the town. Many believe that these spirits continue their routines, endlessly pacing the streets, wandering through the fog, and revisiting the places that once defined their lives. Encounters in Shadowvale often leave visitors with vivid and lasting memories. One man recounted walking down a foggy street when he felt a cold hand brush against his shoulder, followed by the sound of footsteps racing past him, though no one was visible. Another visitor reported seeing a small group of shadowy figures gliding across a courtyard, their movements synchronized as though engaged in a ritual or game from decades past. When approached, the figures vanished, leaving the fog swirling eerily in their wake. Others have experienced fleeting glimpses of figures peering from windows or standing silently at intersections, creating a sense of constant observation. Shadowvale's streets, cloaked in fog and shadow, create a stage for a haunting that engages all the senses. The combination of ghostly figures, unexplained footsteps, chilling cold spots, and whispering voices makes visitors acutely aware of their surroundings, yet perpetually uncertain of what is real. The town seems suspended in a state between past and present, life and afterlife, where every movement in the fog may conceal a spirit, and every sound may carry a message from the unseen. Shadowvale is a place where the past lingers insistently, where ghostly children, workers, and townsfolk replay fragments of lifelong extinguished. Figures glide through fog-covered streets, footsteps echo inconsistently, and whispers rise from abandoned buildings. Visitors who wander here after dark are enveloped in a world where the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary, where every shadow, every sound, and every chill serves as a reminder that some presences cannot be banished by time. In Shadowvale, the town itself seems alive, not with the living, but with the persistent echoes of its spectral inhabitants, forever moving, watching, and whispering through the mist. Ashenwood, located deep in Lincoln County, is a place where time seems to have stopped, leaving the town suspended between memory and decay. At first glance, it appears as any abandoned rural settlement might: homes with peeling paint, empty streets littered with debris, and overgrown yards reclaiming what was once meticulously tended. Yet, those who venture here at night quickly realize that Ashenwood is far from lifeless. The air feels heavy, carrying a chill that seeps into the bones, and a silence that is both oppressive and unnatural. As darkness falls, signs of movement begin to stir inside the abandoned homes. Faint whispers rise on the wind, and soft, sorrowful cries seem to follow visitors wherever they go. The abandoned houses of Ashenwood are the town's most unnerving feature. Windows, long shattered or clouded with grime, occasionally flicker as if lights had been briefly turned on within. Visitors have reported seeing shadows flit across rooms, passing behind furniture and disappearing as soon as they attempt to approach. Doors creak open slowly, swing on rusted hinges, and sometimes slam without cause, as if invisible inhabitants are moving through their old routines. Footsteps echo along the empty floors, mismatched and inconsistent, giving the impression that multiple entities occupy the space, yet no one is ever visible. It is these small, subtle signs of activity that make Ashenwood's atmosphere so profoundly unsettling. Whispers are a constant presence in Ashenwood, drifting through the streets and through the cracked walls of abandoned homes, sometimes faint and indecipherable, other times sharper and more insistent. The voices seem to carry fragments of conversation from another era. Visitors describe the whispers as calling out names, recounting long-forgotten disputes, or uttering warnings that are never fully understood. They are never close enough to locate, yet always near enough to create a sense of being watched, combined with the occasional soft cries that echo through the empty streets. The auditory phenomena create a haunting tapestry of sound that envelopes anyone daring to explore the town after dark. The streets themselves hold their own strange activity. Overgrown and cracked, they twist between empty homes, leading visitors along paths that feel simultaneously familiar and disorienting. Figures sometimes appear in the fog that rises from the forest edges, moving slowly and silently before vanishing entirely. Some witnesses report seeing children dart between buildings, their faces blurred and indistinct, only to disappear when approached. Others claim that the shadowy outlines of adults can be glimpsed through windows or standing in doorways, frozen in gestures that suggest they are caught mid-action, living fragments of a time long gone. The sense of being followed is pervasive. Even when walking alone, visitors feel the presence of unseen observers, footsteps echoing just out of sync with their own movements. Ashenwood's history provides context for the lingering spirits. Once a modest rural town, it thrived on small-scale industry and farming. Over the decades, economic decline forced families to leave, abandoning homes and businesses to the elements. Legends speak of untimely deaths, children lost to illness, workers injured or killed in accidents, residents who vanished without explanation. Some believe that the whispers and cries that haunt the town are echoes of these lives, trapped between the world of the living and the spectral plane. The figures glimpsed in windows, the fleeting shadows, and the footsteps that follow visitors are said to be manifestations of the past, replaying moments that cannot rest. The sensation of being watched in Ashenwood is almost universal among those who explore it. Visitors report a tangible weight in the air, a feeling of pressure that tightens the chest and chills the skin. This presence seems aware of intruders, observing without revealing itself fully. The movement inside homes, the subtle swaying of curtains, the unexplained shifting of objects, each small sign adds to the impression that Ashenwood is alive, with its spectral residents. Even the wind seems to carry intention, curling through broken windows and sweeping down empty streets as if guiding visitors deeper into the haunted town. Encounters in Ashenwood are unpredictable yet unforgettable. One visitor described hearing a child's laughter in the distance, following it down a side street only to find an empty yard. Another reported seeing a figure standing in a window, staring silently before vanishing, leaving only the faint smell of smoke and dust. Some have felt cold hands brush past them, only to turn and find nothing. Shadows often appear along the edges of vision, shifting and stretching unnaturally, always gone when looked at directly. These experiences leave a lasting impression, a reminder that the town's history and its spectral inhabitants are intertwined, existing in a liminal space between past and present. Ashenwood's eerie charm lies in its ability to combine the ordinary with the supernatural. By day, it is a quiet, decaying town. By night, it becomes a landscape of the uncanny. The abandoned homes, overgrown streets, and fog-filled alleys provide a backdrop for spectral activity that engages all the senses. Figures glide through the darkness. Footsteps echo along empty halls. Whispers carry through cracked walls, and faint cries pierce the silence. Mist-bound village, nestled deep in Burnett County, is a place that seems permanently shrouded in fog, both literal and spectral. By day, it appears as an ordinary, if quiet, rural settlement. Weathered houses line narrow streets, fences lean at odd angles, and trees bend over cracked sidewalks, casting long shadows. But as dusk settles, a different reality emerges. A dense mist rolls in from the surrounding woods, curling through alleys and around abandoned homes. Within this haze, visitors first notice the strange phenomena that give Mist-bound Village its reputation. Figures glide silently along the streets, their movements deliberate and fluid, as if navigating both the physical and spectral planes simultaneously. They never speak, yet their presence carries weight. A subtle acknowledgement that the living are intruding on a world that has long ceased to welcome outsiders. The village streets themselves add to the unsettling atmosphere. Narrow lanes twist unpredictably, often ending in cul-de-sacs, or leading past homes whose windows seem like dark eyes staring into the fog. Cracked sidewalks and overgrown yards suggest abandonment, yet the place feels far from empty. Shadows move unnaturally, and mist seems to collect around certain corners, as if drawn to the presence of unseen residents. Visitors report a sudden drop in temperature as they walk these streets, accompanied by fleeting glimpses of figures vanishing into the fog when approached. Some claim the village itself feels alive, responding to their movements, guiding them deeper into its silent, mist-bound heart. The most persistent phenomena in Mist-bound Village are the figures that glide along the streets. Often, these forms are semi-transparent, their outlines blurred by the ever-present mist. Some resemble men and women from eras long past, dressed in clothing that hints at the village's history. Others appear more shadow-like, indistinct, but no less unnerving. They move slowly, deliberately, as if performing tasks that are long since obsolete, walking to unseen destinations, peering into windows, or pacing along sidewalks. Occasionally, the figures pause and look toward visitors, though their faces are blank, void of expression. The effect is chilling, a silent acknowledgement that the living have entered a domain where time no longer functions in ordinary ways. The abandoned houses themselves amplify the village's haunting. Windows sometimes glow faintly with no visible light source, casting lantern-like reflections onto the mist. Doors creak open and slam shut with no wind, and floors groan under invisible weight. Within these homes, soft cries can be heard, rising and falling as though replaying old tragedies. Visitors describe hearing the echoes of arguments, sobbing, or hurried footsteps, all disconnected from any visible source. The sounds are subtle at first, blending with the night air, but grow unmistakably human the longer one lingers. It is as if the village is perpetually replaying moments of its past, unable to let go of its sorrows. Whispers accompany the cries, often drifting through alleys and across streets. These voices are indistinct, fragments of conversation or names spoken long ago. At times, they seem to respond to the presence of visitors, intensifying when someone stops or looks around, fading when ignored. The combination of whispers, cries, and moving figures creates an immersive sense of unease, a feeling that the village is aware of every intrusion. Visitors often describe being followed by shadows that disappear when approached, footsteps echoing in places where no one walks, and the persistent sensation of being observed by eyes that have never blinked. Local legend holds that Mistbound Village was abandoned suddenly, leaving the souls of its residents trapped in a perpetual cycle of remembrance. Tragedies, accidents, and untimely deaths are said to have occurred across generations, and these events have left an imprint on the village. The gliding figures, the soft cries, and the whispering voices are interpreted as echoes of lives that cannot rest. The fog serves as both veil and medium, obscuring the boundary between the living and the dead, allowing visitors a glimpse into a reality they cannot fully understand. Even brief visits leave lasting impressions. Those who walk the streets at night report feelings of unease long after leaving, haunted by fleeting glimpses of figures in the corner of vision or the faint sound of cries carried on the wind. The village seems to imprint itself upon memory, a place where the living are allowed to witness the endurance of sorrow, presence, and memory. Mistbound Village remains a silent testament to the past, a town perpetually caught in the folds of its own tragedies, watched over by the spectral figures that glide endlessly through its fog-laden streets. Hollowvale, tucked deep within the forests of Florence County, is a village that seems perpetually suspended between reality and nightmare. Shrouded in dense mist that rolls off the surrounding woods, it is a place where the ordinary becomes eerie, and silence carries a weight of expectation. By day, the town appears desolate but peaceful, with weathered homes lining narrow, cracked streets, and the occasional rusting fence marking long-forgotten property lines. But as night falls, Hollowvale transforms into something otherworldly. Visitors often report seeing lantern-like glows drifting through the mist, shadowy figures lingering in windows, and silhouettes moving silently among the trees, as if the very village itself is watching and breathing around them. The streets of Hollowvale are narrow, twisting between abandoned homes and overgrown yards. Cracked sidewalks wind along crooked paths, and the occasional remnants of old furniture or broken signs hint at the life that once flourished here. As dusk settles, fog seeps along the ground, thickening and swirling in unnatural ways. It is within this mist that the first signs of the supernatural emerge. Lantern-like glows appear along streets or behind overgrown hedges, floating without visible support. Sometimes they move toward visitors, bobbing gently as if beckoning them, only to vanish when approached, leaving the observer with a growing sense of unease. Many describe these lights as both mesmerizing and terrifying, their warmth suggestive of human presence, yet entirely alien in their behavior. The homes of Hollowvale are the epicenter of its haunting. Once modest residences, now abandoned and decaying, their windows are the eyes of the village. Visitors often glimpse shadowy forms watching silently from within, their outlines fleeting and indistinct, yet undeniably human. Sometimes the shapes appear to shift from window to window, following intruders through the streets. Doors creak open with no wind to stir them, floors groan under unseen weight, and in some houses, lights flicker for no apparent reason. Footsteps echo from upper floors, yet, when investigated, the rooms are empty. The sense of being observed is nearly constant, a silent pressure that tightens the chest and raises goosebumps along the skin. Beyond the homes, the surrounding trees seem alive with watchers. Shadowy figures are often reported among the branches, standing motionless until they vanish as quickly as they appeared. Some visitors claim the forms move in ways that defy physics, stepping silently from one tree to another, or appearing where no one could logically be. The combination of fog, darkness, and these elusive observers creates an immersive sensation of being enclosed in the village, with eyes tracking every movement, yet no clear way to escape the unseen attention. Even the wind seems purposeful, carrying whispers that rise and fall like hesitant conversation, giving the impression that the forest itself communicates with the intruders. The lantern-like lights are particularly unnerving. They sometimes drift along the streets, appearing at doorways or behind trees before floating upward into the fog. Witnesses often describe them as warm yet impossible, glowing with an inner energy that casts no shadows. Some claim the lights mimic human behavior, pausing as if waiting, bobbing in rhythm, like someone walking along the misty roads. Approaching them almost always results in their sudden disappearance, leaving only the cold fog behind and a lingering sense of disappointment or relief, depending on the visitor's courage. Locals warn that these lights may be remnants of the village's past inhabitants, drawn to outsiders as they replay their routines from long ago. The history of Hollow Vale provides context for these strange occurrences. Once a small but thriving settlement, it fell into decline after the local industry slumber, small-scale farming, and river trade ceased operations. Families moved away, leaving behind homes, tools, and memories. Legends speak of tragic events, children lost to disease, adults succumbing to accidents, and mysterious disappearances that were never explained. Some say the lantern-like glows are the remnants of these souls, replaying their lives in a loop, unable to move on. The shadowy figures, whether seen in windows or among the trees, are thought to be echoes of residents keeping vigil, bound to the village by unresolved matters or unfinished routines. Visitors' experiences vary but share common threads. One describes seeing a faint glow drift down the main street, pausing outside a crumbling house before vanishing into the mist. Another recounted glimpsing a shadowy figure in a second-story window, watching silently, only to have it disappear when the visitor approached. Many report hearing faint whispers, sometimes as though their own name is being called, carried along by the fog. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena creates an immersive, unnerving atmosphere that is difficult to forget. Even leaving the village, the memory lingers, as though the presence of Hollow Vale clings to the observer. The environment itself amplifies the haunting. The twisting streets, narrow alleyways, and uneven sidewalks create a sense of disorientation. Fog obscures distances and hides familiar landmarks, making navigation uncertain. The interplay of shadow, light, and mist enhances the perception of movement, allowing the mind to interpret ordinary shapes as figures or glows. Even the wind seems imbued with intent, shifting lantern-like lights, whispering through empty branches, and pushing the fog along the streets like a living entity. Every sense is engaged, drawing visitors into a heightened state of awareness and unease. Hollow Vale is a place where the line between the living and the spectral is blurred. Lantern-like glows float silently through fog-laden streets, shadowy figures linger in windows and among the trees, and soft cries echo from abandoned homes, replaying tragedies long past. The village seems to breathe, respond, and observe, creating an atmosphere where every movement and every sound carries significance. Visitors leave with a profound sense that Hollow Vale is not merely abandoned, is alive with memory, presence, and the persistent echoes of lives that cannot rest. In Hollow Vale, the mist, the lights, and the shadows combine to create an environment where time and death are suspended. Figures glide silently along streets, soft cries rise from forgotten homes, and the forested edges of the village hold watchers in the darkness. It is a place of haunting beauty and lingering sorrow, where every step taken by a visitor is recorded in the fabric of the village, and where the presence of the past is never truly gone. Final Haunted Village, tucked deep in the forests of Wisconsin, is a place that seems untouched by time, yet defined entirely by what is no longer living. By day, the village appears as a cluster of empty homes and deserted streets, with weeds breaking through cracked sidewalks and abandoned fences leaning at impossible angles. Yet the true nature of the village only emerges at dusk, when shadows lengthen and the air grows inexplicably cold. It is then that visitors begin to notice the phenomena that have earned this place its chilling reputation. Figures glide silently along the streets, moving with fluid, deliberate motions that suggest awareness without intent to harm. They are not fully corporeal, yet their presence is undeniable, a constant reminder that the village is never truly empty. The streets of the village are narrow and winding, often ending in dead ends that force travelers to retrace their steps. The fog that creeps in during the evening clings low to the ground, rolling over cracked pavement and curling around abandoned homes. Within this mist, shadows appear and vanish with little warning, Visitors report sudden chills that sweep across their bodies, as if unseen eyes are measuring every step. The fog itself seems alive, carrying with it the faint scent of wood smoke, dust, and something unplaceable, yet eerily familiar, like the memory of life long past. Footsteps are one of the most reported phenomena. Travelers walking the empty streets will hear the distinct echo of shoes on pavement, pacing beside them, behind them, or even ahead of them. But when they turn to look, the sounds vanish. At times, the footsteps match their own rhythm, perfectly in sync, as if someone or something is shadowing them precisely. Other times, the pacing is irregular, stopping and starting unpredictably, heightening the sense of being watched by presences that exist in another plane. The effect is subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but builds an overwhelming tension for anyone lingering too long. Figures are the most unsettling presence in Final Haunted Village. Shadowy forms glide along streets, appearing near corners, across empty squares, or at the edges of yards. They are semi-transparent, their features blurred by distance and darkness, yet clearly human in shape. Some seem to perform repetitive actions, walking, peering into windows, or gesturing subtly toward invisible companions. Others drift aimlessly, as though moving on paths only they can perceive. Occasionally, a figure pauses and regards a visitor directly, but their face is void of expression, eyes dark and unblinking. The encounter leaves a lingering dread, a sense that these figures are patient and persistent, waiting for company that may never come. Abandoned homes and shops add to the village's haunting. Windows glow faintly, without light, and doors creak open or slam shut with no wind to move them. Floors groan under invisible weight, and cold drafts pass through rooms with no apparent source. Soft whispers rise and fall, drifting across streets and alleyways, carrying fragments of conversation, names, or warnings. Sometimes these voices seem personal, responding subtly to the presence of visitors, while other times they are distant, echoing events from decades past. The village seems to replay its history perpetually, preserving memories of its former inhabitants and their unfulfilled lives. Local lore suggests that anyone who lingers too long risks joining the village's endless procession. The shadows, whispers, and gliding figures are believed to be the souls of those trapped between life and death, waiting for others to share in their solitude. The village has claimed countless curious travelers who underestimated the depth of its haunting, leaving behind only stories of chilling encounters. Even brief visits leave lasting impressions, cold chills that return unexpectedly, a sense of being observed, and fleeting glimpses of movement just out of sight. For those who venture too long, the village may never release them. These are Wisconsin's haunted silent villages, where shadowy figures glide along empty streets, whispers echo from abandoned homes, and the past never truly rests. Each village holds stories of forgotten lives, tragedies, and spirits who refuse to leave. If you ever explore these silent villages at night, beware. Ghostly figures may appear beside you, whispers may call your name, and shadows may glide just out of reach. These villages are alive with history and with spirits who linger, watching and waiting for anyone who dares to enter the forgotten streets of Wisconsin. Thank you for exploring Wisconsin's haunted silent villages with me. Stay cautious, stay curious, and always respect the spirits who haunt these deserted homes and streets, forever drifting, forever whispering, and forever bound to the shadows of the past.